At this time. Colleagues, as usual, I'll read through every item so we make sure that they're all properly vetted before our meeting Monday night. If you have any concerns or questions or any comments, please just get my attention and we'll do that. Same thing for you, Superintendent. I see you have staff here. You may have some items that you'd like for them to address. All right, so of course the first part of the agenda will be to open the meeting and then the purpose, and then we head into, and let me get on the right one here. Sorry about that. All right, 22nd workshop meeting. Okay, I got it now. Everybody else up? Okay,
Yes,
you're
sir.
ahead of me. Thank you. All right, so we do have a couple of, or at least one change to the agenda, so I'll read that at this time. 2.1 agenda changes, recognitions added, item 3.3, recognition of Okaloosa County educators for earning Google Educator, Apple Teacher, and Microsoft Innovative Educator designations, presented by Superintendent Chambers. So that takes us through the changes to the agenda, and then we move into recognitions. 3.1 will be recognition of Wanda Avery on the occasion of her retirement, presented by Superintendent Chambers. 3.2, recognition of Mr. Mike Fantaski on the occasion of his retirement, presented by Superintendent Chambers. And then 3.3, recognition of Okaloosa County educators for earning Google Educator, Apple Teacher, and Microsoft Innovative Educator designations, presented by Superintendent Chambers. Then we have one visitor that has gone through the process to be placed on the agenda. His name is Mr. Todd Cyrus, and he wishes to speak about school district infrastructure funding. We do have an administrative appointment, 5.1, the appointment of Assistant Principal 2 for Northwood Elementary School, recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Section 6 will be public comment. Section 7, 7.1, in-county travel paid for the period of July 25th through August the 7th, 2019, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer. 7.2, out-of-county travel paid for the period of July 25th through August the 7th, 2019, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer. And that takes us to Section 8, consent agenda. 8.1 will be approval. 8.2 is the approval of the minutes of the workshop meeting of August the 8th, 2019, minutes of the regular meeting of August the 12th, 2019, all recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.3 will be the adoption of School Board Resolution 19-05 for the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida, presented by Mr. Danny Dean, Specialist, School Safety, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.4, invoices to be approved for payment, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.5, school donations, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.6, payroll warrant register and accounts payable warrant register for July 2019 totaling $9,091,486.48, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.7, exempted purchase over $25,000 to Curriculum Associates, Northwood Elementary School, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.8, exempted purchase over $25,000 to Curriculum Associates, Riverside Elementary School, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.9, service agreement number 20-57, Grow Your Gift Services, LLC, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.10, sale and disposal of surplus property, presented by Mr. Steve Bolton, Program Director Maintenance, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.11, District Instructional Leadership and Faculty Development Grant Application, presented by Mrs. Cindy Gates, Director 1, Principal Evaluation and Special Programs, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.12, exempted purchase over $25,000, Studer Education, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.13, school-to-work contracts between the School Board of Okaloosa County and school-to-work providers to provide career experience opportunities to eligible students at Silver Sand School, presented by Mrs. Melody Summer, Program Director, Exceptional Student Education, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Dr. White, I'd
Yes,
like
sir.
to just comment on this. And again, this is an awesome program that allows our students at Silver Sands to have opportunity to get hands-on experiences in different work environments. So again, thank you to those business partners and Ms. Summer for working that out. So.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. All right, so 8.14, Professional Learning Catalog for the 2019-2020 school year, presented by Ms. Karen Peak, Program Director, Professional Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. All right, moving on to Section 9, Superintendent's Human Resources Recommendations. 9.1, Employees on Administrative Leave, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources. 9.2, Deferred Retirement Option Program, DROP, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources. 9.3, Clear Certification Requirements and Issuance of Contracts for the 2019-2020 school year, presented by Ms. 9.4, Out of Field Report for the 2019-2020 school year, presented by Ms. Karen Peak, Program Director of Professional Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.5, Employment Separations, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.6, Personnel Recommendations, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.7, Employee Transfers, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.8, Employee Suspension, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.9, Employee Suspension, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.10, Reinstatement Reimbursement of Sick Leave due to Line of Duty Illness, Injury, Medical Examination, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. And then finally, 9.11, Leave Without Pay, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. In Section 10, there, as of now, are no discussion agenda items. Section 11 would be Program Owners Representatives Business Program Status Report by the Board's representative to the construction program. Mr. Destin, sir, do you have something?
I will give you a brief positive report on our stadium repairs. I think that
Okay.
they made very good progress on moving the structural members that
Wow.
have to be moved.
Wow.
My understanding is that has been accomplished, so I'm hoping that we're on schedule to get back open.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Any questions, board members?
Good, that's
Okay.
great.
All right, thank you, Mr. Destin. All right, so moving on then to Section 12, Information Technology Seat Management Contract 12.1, CI Task Order Number 2-144, OCSD Enterprise CCTV EOC Station, presented by Mr. Dustin Key, Specialist, Seat Management, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. And that takes us to Section 13. Mr. Attorney, your business, sir.
No report this morning.
Thank you, sir. Superintendent, you've got some out-of-state student field trip requests, and you may have other items, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir, I appreciate it. So as we all know, the start of the school year is upon us. I just wanted to cover just a few things. So one, transportation. So as you know, at the beginning of the school year, transportation, at times may have some issues from time to time in terms of when a school bus may leave a school and when they may drop off that last child. And we have received some emails from parents, but what I'm very proud of is the fact that the Transportation Department has done a phenomenal job of getting back with parents, communicating with them, whether it be by email or by phone. Mr. McGinnis and his staff, they've done a remarkable job of creating even more efficient routes once you realize, how many kids might actually be on the bus. So I'm very proud of that as well. One of the concerns that has come up, ACs on buses. And as you know, we have some buses that have ACs and some buses, they do not have ACs. That first week of school, as you know, was extremely hot. Mr. McGinnis and his staff did a great job allowing kids to have water on the bus. No food, but water on the bus. So I'm very proud of the transportation department and what they've done, because as you know, not only do the bus drivers drive routes, but route coordinators, maintenance folks for the buses, all are pitching in. So I appreciate that. Mr. Horton's also had a hand in that and communicating with parents as well. So I appreciate that. Also, as you know, during the first week of school and even into the second week of school, car rider lines might be longer than normal. But once again, very proud to say, as our teachers and staff, as they've worked with the parents in the car rider line, or as they've worked with the students, some of the car rider line times literally have decreased by an hour or 40 minutes less time. And that's about getting a system in place and fine-tuning that system. So extremely proud of that. But I think we all know at the very beginning of the year, that first week, these are very common, and we quickly rectify those situations. So I'm very proud of the staff. Teachers, staff, and principals. I know a lot of you have gone out to the schools. You've seen the remarkable job that they're doing, not only just greeting the kids and getting them into the schools and getting families acclimated, but the supervision. Just very proud of what our teachers, staff, our principals are doing at the start of the school year. So that's some of the information I want to share just with the start. I would love for Mr. Horton to come up, if he would, really quickly, and just give a quick update on where we are on phase 1 of our safety plans.
Good morning and welcome, Mr. Horton.
Good morning, Dr. White, board members. If you've been around our high schools and visiting them, as I know many of you have, you'll notice that there have been changes, obviously, to the front entryways to the schools. So the security measures that the board has authorized and approved are underway. You'll also see fencing going up at different locations, and so we're making good progress. As you can imagine, I think throughout the state of Florida, there's a lot of this type of activity going on, and so there are some materials that are more scarce than others, and so there are some things that we are waiting on to complete some of these processes. The board recalls that we have asked for our contractor, Jacobs Titan, to provide us with the next round of information on the next set of schools from a security standpoint, and so we expect to have some information, cost information on that in the month of September to bring back to you to keep this process moving ahead to make sure that each of our schools become even safer. The other thing that's occurring right now at some of those schools that have not had the construction piece going on is the AI phone and front door locking. And so if you visited some of those schools, it was interesting, Commissioner Corcoran visited last Thursday Riverside, and the AI phone was there at the front door, and so we pushed the button and get access to the school. And it's a change for the people in the front office. It's a change for the parents. What we see when we look out, and the schools are doing a great job of educating families on the new normal of how to keep our students safer, and lots of positive comments from parents about the steps that you guys have authorized the staff to take to help make our schools even safer. So appreciative of that.
Thank you, Mr. Horton, and I think it's worthwhile to maybe reiterate that this school board voted to basically transfer a significant amount of funding from other sources, other needs, to help provide for the needed, necessary safety and security measures that you guys and Mr. Destin have done a great job in implementing. If I remember correctly, Mrs. Scallon, was that about $4.5 million that we moved roughly, Mr. Horton?
It was a significant amount. I don't have the exact amount, but it was in the
Okay.
millions, yes, sir.
Was over
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, over 4 million, I think so, yeah. And that's important, and of course, the consequence of that is that wasn't new money or money that we suddenly grew on trees. That was money that we took from other areas where that money was needed, but we prioritized with everything that's been happening in terms of the safety of our students. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Anything
And of course,
else?
the capital workshop that's coming up this morning and also is available for folks to the extent that it's a single note budget. It's a single note budget.
Right.
In favor of student safety. And so we kind of take a look, and under Mr. Destin's leadership too on that front, the things that we have to do to keep our schools running, and then everything else that we can bring into the student safety piece, we'll ask the board to consider that, obviously.
Yes, sir. Good, good.
I'll
Yes,
just
sir,
comment,
Brian.
some of the schools that I've been to where I've had to ring the doorbell, there's a parent there, and I asked them, I say, how do you like this new system? And everybody, says they appreciate it. They like the fact that we've taken this safety measure. They understand it could be kind of an inconvenience, but they'd rather have that inconvenience over the safety, for the
Yes,
safety of
sir.
their children.
And it speaks to some things that parents do see, other safety measures this board has authorized parents don't see. And so there are layers, and it is about layers, because you may not consider that one piece of equipment to be enough in and of itself to secure a school, but it's one piece. And so I think the layered approach is a wise one to take.
I
Anything
have
else,
I have a
Ms.
question. Along with that, you're talking about the heat. I know air conditioners and all that are taking a real, how's that looking? Everybody?
So
Cool
in the schools?
Yes.
Yeah, so with as many rooms as we have, there's always going to be something going on. The biggest thing that was on my radar, just to give a shout out to a school and some teachers, is at Mary Esther, we had some valves that were stuck on, so it was cold, too cold. And so we've already worked with the contractor, and we've got a schedule to get in there, but it involves getting up into the ceilings a little bit. And so we've got to work around the school and the children to be able to do that. My guys know that at this time of year, air conditioning is critical. And so wherever that's not happening, that's what we need to be focusing on.
Thank you.
Yep.
And along those lines, I would just say that just like in transportation and some of the lines that may form at schools, and we have to be a little patient, that air conditioners break. And I know that the schools and the principals and the teachers, when that happens, often they have to make an accommodation by maybe moving a classroom to a different location for a period of time, just to make sure that those kids and the teacher have an air-conditioned environment, and then once it's repaired, move back. And those are just some of the kind of things that we go through, particularly this time of year, but I promise relief is coming. It won't be long.
We'll be asking
About a
about
month.
heat.
We hope.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Wood.
You may want to wait there just for one
Okay.
second. And I would say, so back on the AI phones piece, like many of you have probably done, I actually went behind the desk with one of the secretaries, looked at the contraption, gave me a quick tutor on how to do it, so I appreciated that, and we were able to see a family come in, and they too were very appreciative for that technology. As you know, enrollment at this time of the year, I think, is important, that we keep an eye on enrollment and know exactly, where we are, not only as a district, but also by school. Mr. Horton does a great job of monitoring the enrollment, and wanted him to give kind of just an update on where we are globally.
So globally, and again, as you know, the state knows that there's a lot of enrollment fluctuation at the beginning of the year, and that's why they do their enrollment counts for funding in October. Because school districts across the state typically have a small decrease in enrollment between the beginning of the year and October. And some of that has to do with students who have moved on during the summer and never notify the district. And so we're going through and kind of cleaning out and withdrawing officially those students who did not show up the first 10 days of school. At this time, compared to last August 22nd, so again, just a year to date, we're about 600 students above where we were at that time.
Wow.
The district, so That's about 2% overall, about 2%. The district has been growing at a modest rate over the last several years. And so it's something that we'll watch throughout the fall. Of course, last year after Hurricane Michael, we had a big boost in enrollment from those folks that were moved over here. Some have stayed, obviously, and some have moved on to other areas. So we're watching that carefully. A couple schools of note that have had some significant enrollment increase. Fort Walton Beach High School was at about 1,780 this time last year, and they're just under 1,900 this year, so a little over 100 kids. I think Mr. Spolsky is doing a great job managing the Viking ship over there, and they've got a large freshman class. They're still below where Niceville and Crestview are,
Yeah.
so probably those schools, they'll probably have some conversations about that, but it's a great start to the Viking school year there. I think another school in the north end that had some significant growth this year was Davidson Middle School. They're rather large as well. And then just across the board, modest growth in those other schools. But at this point, and again, till we count the beans at the end of October when we report our attendance for FTE, but things look pretty strong for enrollment right now.
I'm hearing a lot
Classrooms?
of kindergartners. Is that,
We do. We actually have had more kindergartners come in this year than the last few years. I think by last check, my number was 2,450 roughly kindergartners, and it's probably been 2,300, 2,250 the last few years. So more kindergartners, and you'll see when you look at enrollment trends over years, you'll see maybe a bubble. Makes you want to go back 5 years and figure out what was going on then, but. You see a bubble of enrollment go through the system, and so it could be something like that for this group of kindergartners. Yes, ma'am.
And classroom-wise, we feel pretty good? Are we going to need more
We do.
portables? Or?
Yes, sir. We did add on 4 portables during the summer, and those were set up ready to go for the beginning of the year.
Okay.
We don't anticipate
Okay.
bringing in any new portables.
Okay.
What's happening right now we're probably in the last throes of looking at our class size and making adjustments where we need to. So, there'll be a school here or there that needs an extra allocation going forward, once we've now determined that folks and the kids are actually there to warrant that.
Right.
So that's still going on to some level, and
Sure.
and Dr. Hale and HR do a great job of getting, and Ms. Scallon getting those resources out, and teachers and principals are being very thoughtful in the ways that they're addressing class size, to try to have as minimal impact on kids as they can, especially the younger ones.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I just have one, and it might just be for Dr. Hale here, but since we've obviously seen an increase in population with students, are all of our teaching positions currently filled right now?
Well, I know I could answer no to that, because once the first week of school begins, there are cases where we have to send another allocation to a school based on enrollment with an eye on class size. So that's happened in the last few days. So that means for certain there are some openings.
Right.
Now what happens is, let's say at a first grade level, there may be 6 teachers out there. The 7th teacher that gets hired to help the school reach class size may be somebody from within the school who's been an aide, and it's happened multiple occasions. A certified teacher who's maybe been serving in a different role there that they hire and steps right into that role. A school could implement a co-teach model, where they have 2 teachers in one classroom with a higher number of students, if that makes sense for those students in that school. But he may have more specifics on numbers.
Right. No, I was just talking about where, like Bob Sykes, for instance, had to add kindergarten, I believe it was, or first grade. Would we have to do that? Do we have teachers ready to go for those positions? Are we putting like a sub in there until we do get a teacher in there?
So that could happen. It could be a number of things. That's a good question, Mr. Bryant. The school could maintain the students in the classroom that they're in, and then communicating with the parents about creating a new class. And so wait until that teacher's hired, sets up their classroom, has their supplies for that to happen. Or it could be that they have a substitute in place, they have a room ready, and they begin that process on the front end. But the goal is to get that done as quickly as possible, so there's as little impact on families as there possibly can be.
Now, on the elementary side, it's a little different, but at the high school level, it's about 2 weeks is about the time we try to get somebody in there.
Yeah, at this point at high school, we're not really hiring new teachers for class size. There may be someone's resigned or retired or moved on, but what's happening at the high schools now is the school might get 3 or 4 sections that they can then build an extra English class, an extra math class, and then that's usually remedied at the school level by a teacher electing to take on a 6th period and the pay that goes with that. So now if you'll go back 7, 8 years ago, this kind of movement of students was rampant.
That's right.
When we were calculating our class size in a different format. So what we're seeing now is very small across the district, and we still appreciate parents' understanding for the things that we have to do as required by law
That's an
to
important
meet
point.
class size. And
That's
so
an
we're not
important
doing
point.
this just to
Right.
to move kids around. We've got to do it by law, and
Legal compulsion.
Yes, sir.
We're required to do this, right.
And I think with the board being the good stewards of the taxpayers' money, to put out more teaching units than you know you need for kids. So in certain places, it's prudent to wait to see who shows up. And so that's what we're doing.
And I appreciate you saying that, because at these meetings that are live streamed and all that, we can educate the people that are watching. Like Dr. White said, a lot of this is done because legally we have to do this. And so I appreciate you sharing that information so people
Yes, sir.
don't just think we're,
Moving kids.
yeah, moving kids.
And really, high kudos go to those teachers who agree to take on an additional class period.
right.
Because I know they have saved us numerous times at the building site.
Right, that's right.
With class size. So those teachers really do an awesome job when they step up and take that extra period.
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Horton, to clarify, we're at a situation where it's an average, not a per-class number, correct?
Yes, ma'am. When the controlled open enrollment statute and laws came into being, that having that policy and participating in controlled open enrollment, which is a state requirement, so we calculate our school class size at a school average.
So there might be one class that has more, like 119, 118, something like that, but it still averages out.
That's a good point, too, because within one school, just based on the enrollment, second graders, there could be 20 in those second grader classes, and then when you get and look at first grade, it's 17 or 16.
Right.
And it's been that way for a few years, so in the schools, the teachers understand that, but in some cases, when a parent might question why there are more kids in their
Right.
class than the other, but you've hit the nail on the head exactly.
Yeah.
It's a grade band average, so K3 is an average, 4.8 is an average, and 9.12 is an average. And so
Right.
if your school has those grades, then you adhere to it at those band levels.
I just wanted the public to understand that it's not one class, each class, it's an average, so,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
And one thing you may or may not know is, so Mr. Horton, in conjunction with Dr. Hale and Ms. Scallon, literally look at every single school, every single teacher, every single class, monitoring the class size. And so there's a lot of time and energy that goes into that, and I think as you know, it's important to do that so we can be as responsible
Absolutely.
as possible with the money that we're allocated.
Exactly.
And I think I've heard also at various pockets across the district, there have been a large influx of ESOL students or a large influx of ESE students. And then that, again, goes to your calculation of what teachers with what certifications we have to have in those positions.
You're exactly right, and Ms. Tucker could speak to that, but I know that there's been a big increase in ELL students in the district, and we have some developmental English language classes for those students, so we've had occasion this year to put another section out into a school to allow for those classes to be smaller in number, because they're such important in need.
And I think, too, it would behoove us to give a shout out to some of our community partners. I know there are a lot of churches who have ESOL classes, and, for instance, our church, they hold free classes for students who need additional help there. So kudos to those community resources that we have that parents take advantage of.
Absolutely.
All right, Superintendent, anything else?
So for the workshop, I do have a few things
How
today.
about Mr. Horton? Can he
So
sit
Mr.
down?
Horton, your legs are probably getting tired, so you're good.
Okay.
Don't lock your knees.
So a couple other things, and you brought up the hiring, so I did want Dr. Hale to come up like we've done the last couple meetings and just kind of share with us, where we are in terms of positions that we still need to hire for.
Good morning, everyone.
Help, Doctor.
Dr. White, Board. Mr. Chambers. We are, as Mr. Horton said, fluidly addressing class size through allocations and things like that. And as a result, we still do have 5 active advertisements for classroom teachers out there. 7 total, because 2 are getting ready. Looking at it this morning, they have gone inactive recently through the transfer window and are getting ready to go out to the general public. So I would call that 7 positions, only one of which is at the high school level. 2 elementary, a high school reading, and then of course we have 2 ESE-related classroom positions that we're still trying to fill. The good news is that there's applicants in most of these, not all of them. The one that we're looking at that has no applicants right now is the preschool handicapped position at Southside. So I was visiting Southside yesterday, and they're doing amazing things there. And if anybody's watching that has an interest in that, fill out an application on Oasis, because that appears to be a great place to work. I enjoyed my time there. Those staff members do a great job, and those children are just precious. So it's a good place to turn in an application. The 2 that are getting ready to go back out onto Oasis, one is a middle school position. It's a 6th grade position, and then there's another elementary school position getting ready to go out there. So overall 7. A lot of those are recent allocations within the last week that have just made it through transfer period and things like that. So the applications seem pretty solid with regard to the classroom positions. We still continue to hunt for speech pathologists, school psychologists. We have good application numbers for the staffing specialist position that's out there, but I am happy to report that we did have an inquiry through Indeed about one of our speech pathologists who is in the process of filling out an Oasis application right now, so we'll see if that works out. But not a whole lot of new information to update with regard to the non-classroom positions. In terms of the ed support positions, there's 9 total paraprofessionals positions that are out there of various types. 6 of them are related to ESE in some form or fashion, either a one-to-one or a classroom ESE assistant, and then 2 elementary. So paras we continue to have positions out there for paraprofessionals. In terms of the custodial positions, we have 4 custodial positions of various, a lead and then a daytime and things like that. And then, of course, 13 cleaner positions that are out there. So there's plenty of opportunities for people out there looking for part-time cleaner works after their day job or whatever, if they'd like to. Those are really the only pockets. We have some transportation needs, of course, still. We're still looking for bus drivers. We do have some incentives out there for people recommending bus drivers that come through and make it all the way through the testing and things like that. So we'd encourage our staff members out there to help us with the hunt for bus drivers. And then, of course, there's some transportation assistance and things like that. So we still have a lot of ed support positions that we're trying to fill. And transportation is doing a good job of going and seeking and shaking the trees. And, of course, we're trying to help with that, too. I would also say that, as I said last time I was up here, the processing through HR, once we get those applications going, is really working seamlessly over there. So the hunt continues.
So with the ESE positions, of course, I have Northwood, and Edwards is another school that last year had issues with CBS. How are those looking? Is that
I don't have any CBS positions that I'm looking for right now specifically.
I
Without
know we struggled last year with those.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking at the roster, and I don't see anything that's listed specifically as CBS in the notes, so I think we're okay there.
Good.
And nothing from either one of those schools.
Good,
So.
good.
Well, I just add, and board members, you well know this, and I think the public probably knows it too, but a little growth, I think Mr. Horton said about 2%, is really good for a school system. And it certainly is a little more complicated for us in finding folks to work now, because the economy is doing so well, so the marketplace is tough to acquire those employees. But a little growth is good, because some of us have been through a period and when we had declining enrollment, and we all know how painful that is when we go through that. So yeah, we got some growing pains, but that's a lot better than the alternative, in my opinion. Okay.
I agree. Thank you.
All right. Is Dr. Hill finished, or?
Yes, sir, you're good.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hill.
Dr. Hale will be back up at the next board meeting. As you know, Best and the Brightest
Okay.
has been an interesting topic for us here in Okaloosa County.
Yep.
Dr. Hale and Mr. Butler and the union, they've had some great discussions as it pertains to the Best and the Brightest, and Ms. Cox as well. So it's very different this year. I think one thing that once we get down to the end of this, I think we'll be proud that we will not be choosing like who's a teacher and who's not a teacher. So I think we'll have some good resolution there. But I do think Dr. Hale, the union, working through this, and I think this will be what's in the best interest of all instructional staff. So that'll come specifically, so you'll get a very detailed understanding of the three categories at the next board meeting. The last two things I do have, just going back over, as you know, the Commissioner of Education was here. We did have a good visit over at Riverside. You know, some people have asked me, how did Riverside get chosen? Of course, you got to choose a school, and the Commissioner of Education was going from county to county. He did want a school that was close to I-10. He wanted an elementary school, and he wanted second grade. So we did end up choosing Riverside. Had a fantastic visit. He and the Teacher of the Year for the state of Florida, they did a nice read to some students with dance, with song, and with a book. So it was a great visit. Ms. Curley, the principal over there, did a fantastic job preparing for that. So just want to thank them. And the last thing I would say is this year, as you may remember, about 10 years ago or so, we had a very strong mentoring program, and where every school had mentors. Right now, we have schools that may have a mentor or may not have mentors, and not talking about the Take Stock in Children. So Ms. Gates is doing a great job. We are working with churches. We're working with the military. We had a great meeting with Hurlburt and their leadership over there, the base commander. Had a great meeting there. Businesses within the community. And our goal is that every school will be adopted by either a church group or the military or an organization. We're really focusing on specific students. And of course, teachers and schools may also say, hey, these students also need it. So I'm very proud. Mrs. Gates has done a fantastic job rallying all these different organizations to really get a strong mentoring program back in Okaloosa County for the 2019-20 school year. And that's all I have.
All right, Superintendent. Well, so, colleagues, the next item of business will be board members. And so, as usual, Mr. Destin, do you have anything that you'd like to?
Well, I don't have any requests for anything. I just want to congratulate all the thousands of people that have gotten this big machine working again.
Yeah.
It's I'm always amazed how, you took a business like this and shut it down for 3 or 4 months and then started it up every year. It would lead to great difficulties, and we seem to be able to do it every year. So I want to congratulate all of them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very good. Thank you. All right, Mr. Bryant.
Just quickly, I would like to thank Mr. Bolton, Dr. Hale, Ms. Appleberg, all of us that stood out at the pickup lines at some of the schools that I represent, Bob Sykes, Walker, and Antioch, and then yesterday I was at Florosa, which Dr. Smith, that system went great, but it was just really like Mr. Chambers said, there's a lot of moving pieces that are going on that first week, and I try to assure parents that we are all out there doing our best to get those kids put in a car safely, and out they go. I will say that the times improved dramatically. I actually timed from the first child got picked up to the last child, and at Walker it was 44 minutes on their third day, which the first day was like an hour and a half. So the systems are not perfect, and those schools, when they were built, were not built to pick up 600 kids, at one time. So, but I will say that we had a meeting with the City of Crestview Police Department, the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Department, and the school district, which was head up by Mr. Bolton and Mr. Dean with our safety. But one thing I would like to request, Mr. Chambers, in light of all the car pickup and everything that we have going on in all the schools, one of the things that we talked about, or that they talked about in this meeting, was the need for crossing guards. And, you know, the city of, the police department will train and get people out there. But one thing I was talking to Mr. Dean about is, you know, what can we do as a district to maybe encourage, is there a way we might be able to take the schools that need it the most to have a crossing guard and maybe have that person be employed by the school district so we can train them and get them out there. They'll still be trained properly by law enforcement, but we can have them for us in that way. And I know not all schools need it, but just maybe look at that if there's a need for certain schools that might need a crossing guard. Because in some of our areas, people, you know, as much as I want to say are trying to be careful, they get in a hurry. And what's seconds to us, what's seconds in time, you know, could cause a serious accident out there. People would just be patient, slow down. We're going to get the kids there, you know, it's all going to be good. But where there's a need maybe for a crossing guard across the district, something we can look at, maybe talk to Mr. Dean about if there's a need at certain schools for a crossing guard, and maybe we can do something to do that.
All right. So that sounds like a new position. I don't know if we have a job description for that. So
I don't know if
the superintendent.
Yeah, a new position or maybe a stipend for somebody to go out there and do it. I mean, because the city of the Crestview Police Department says that, you know, they can get people out there, but they just don't have the people that are doing it. And maybe if it within the schools that need somebody, if we can maybe find somebody that'd be willing to do that, and maybe a small stipend for them.
Supplement perhaps,
Yes,
maybe
sir.
if it's an
Yes, sir.
employee.
Yes, sir. Not necessarily creating a new position, because I understand not every school needs it, but just give them an incentive to get out there, you know.
I hear you, and we will look into that.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Awesome. Okay, anything else?
Just thank you to all the staff and everybody out there that, like you said, y'all did awesome getting this machine rolling. It's a good year so far. Everyone's important.
Okay. All right, Dr. Kelly.
Well, I would just say I could echo everything my two colleagues have just said, but thinking about the school level, the school-based leaders and the teachers for being so flexible the first couple of weeks of school. I know they've had to banter around and move classes and shuffle students around, and for the parents for understanding. So that's always good to note, those people being so gracious in their own schedules. I would note that there are about 3 of us up here who this week will celebrate the end of our first year of service in this term. So congratulations, colleagues, for reaching your 1-year anniversary.
Good or bad, we're
And
still
that's
here.
it. We're here. That's right. That's right. That's all I have.
All right, Dr. Kelly. Ms. Evanchik.
Okay,
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
good. Well, a couple of things. Following up on the mentorship, I am the liaison for the board to the Okaloosa Public Schools Foundation, and we did kick off our mentoring lunches with our mentors, with our mentees at different schools, and that was great, either getting those back who, still have the same one, or meeting new ones, and that's been a positive thing. So that is moving forward. And also, our foundation is really growing. We've added a lot of community members to the foundation, and that's always great to have more people from different avenues coming into the foundation. It allows us to be a lot more diverse, and that's important for us to get out there and do that. The other thing is, I want to publicly thank something that we got an email for, and that's Randy Wise Homes and United Bank, and they have sold one of their homes, and all the proceeds are going to the Taylor Haugen, am I saying that correctly, Foundation. And I know that foundation gives a lot of equipment for safety and sports. I think that's a fantastic thing for them to do. And one final thing, yesterday I was honored to speak before the Fort Walton Beach Rotary Club, and had a very good time. They're very positive and very supportive of what's going on in the school, and very knowledgeable of keeping up. And that's always great to see our community civic organizations to be aware of what's happening. So I enjoyed my time with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evanchik. All right, so that takes us into item 16 on public comment at the end of the meeting. I do want to point out that we do have a public hearing scheduled, 17.1, to be a public hearing on the school district's 5-year capital outlay plan, presented by Ms. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, which we will soon have a workshop on in about 15 minutes. All right, so that takes us through the agenda that's organized here for us. Superintendent, is there anything else in your mind that we need to cover here?
I think we are good.
Okay, Mr. McInnes, you think we're good? All right, staff, colleagues, everybody through? All right, this meeting's adjourned.